I once robbed my whole gym. The whole gym.
Like
70 kids
robbed them?
without a gun. Like, yo, everybody give me your coats, give me your Walkmans. I couldn't even carry it. Some of the guys I robbed had to help me carry the stuff with them.
Long ago, Fat Joe came out and said he lied in 95% of his rhymes. What did you think of that?
He told the truth for the first time, that he's a liar. That you can't believe nothing that comes out of his mouth. He's a liar.
One thing Fat Joe is famously known for is his iconic hip-hop storytelling. He always seems to have a wild story to tell, whether it's about himself or someone else. But over time, it's become clear that many of those so-called legendary tales might just be straight-up lies.
Didn't you call Fat Joe hip-hop's biggest liar?
100%.
How's that?
Fat Joe's always lying.
He's been called out by several people in the industry. Some even nicknamed him Leotino. Let's take a look. There's no denying that Fat Joe is one of the most entertaining figures in hip-hop. Fans constantly point out how engaging and fun he is whenever he gets into storytelling mode. But where people start to draw the line is when the stories shift from entertaining to flat-out unbelievable. Some of them are so over the top that even people who weren't around during that era can instantly tell something doesn't add up. Take, for example, one of his most talked about and absurd stories. Fat Joe once claimed that back when he was in high school, he robbed his entire gym class. Not a few people, but the whole gym. According to Joe, that was about 70 students, and he even said he did it without using a single weapon. Just him, walking into the gym and somehow intimidating 70 teenagers into handing over their stuff.
I once robbed my whole gym. The whole gym.
Like
70 kids
robbed them?
without a gun. Like, yo, everybody give me your coats, give me your Walkmans.
As if that wasn't wild enough, he added that he couldn't even carry everything he stole, so some of the people he was robbing actually helped him carry it out.
I couldn't even carry it. Some of the guys I robbed had to help me carry the stuff with them.
Now that's the part that really threw people off. Content creator Milz also spoke on this and pretty much echoed what everyone was thinking. He pointed out how wildly unrealistic that entire scenario sounds. First, the setting, most likely a gym somewhere in the Bronx, would have had way too much going on for someone to pull that off unnoticed.
He said he robbed the whole gym. A Bronx school gym. The Bronx.
Then the number itself, 70 students, and somehow, no one decided to fight back or even question what was going on. They just stood around and let it happen. Milz even gave Joe the benefit of the doubt, saying maybe he did rob a few kids back then. One or two, sure, that's not hard to believe. But 70, all by himself, and getting help from the people he just jacked? That's where the story completely falls apart.
And some of these might just be exaggerations, because I'm pretty sure he probably robbed maybe one or two, because I knew dudes that I went to school with like that. But 70? Come on. Come on, man.
And of course, that's just one example. Fat Joe has told several other stories that raise eyebrows just as high, starting with his claim about Tupac. Back in 1995, Fat Joe was on the radio talking about the infamous East Coast versus West Coast beef. During that broadcast, he said some things that allegedly caused tensions with Puerto Rican inmates who were loyal to him.
And they asked me the question, yo, Joe, what you think about Tupac and all that? I said, yo, he's cool, but, you know, if they step to me, it's gonna be Tupac's locked up upstate in New York. The Puerto Ricans hear that, and they're like, Poppy, Tupac got beef with Fat Joe.
According to Joe, Tupac somehow got wind of the situation and personally called him from prison, asking for help dealing with a Puerto Rican inmate who was supposedly giving him trouble.
I get a phone call from Greg Nice, who pretty much put me in the game, one of my brothers. He said, yo, Joe, I got Pac on the other line. I was like, Pac?
Joe claimed they had a conversation, cleared the air, and that there was no animosity between them. He even said he sent a message to his guy, Charlie Rock LD, asking him to hold Pac down in prison.
Tupac was like, yo, these Puerto Ricans is on me. Like, you said something in the radio. I don't got a problem with you, Joe. Like this, I know what's up, this. And so, you know, we sent the kite out to the Puerto Ricans and be like, nah.
But in a recent interview, Tupac's cousin, William Lisane, shut that story down completely. He explained that while Fat Joe definitely had power with his Puerto Rican people, the idea that Pac needed his help just didn't make sense.
I know he got strength with Puerto Ricans, his people. But as far as Tupac being in prison, having to call Joe to keep the Puerto Ricans off his back because they think that he got beef with Joe in the street or some, I don't know about that.
According to Lisane, the people who ran the New York State prison where Tupac was being held were actually people who knew and loved Pac.
But a lot of people who run the prisons in the New York State penal system are people that we know. They people that love us. They family members, man.
He wasn't in a prison where people would walk all over him. On the contrary, he was surrounded by strong individuals who had his back from the moment he got there.
Tupac wasn't in a prison where people was going to walk all over him. That wasn't going to be the situation. He was in prison with people who were strong.
In fact, when Pac arrived, there were already people waiting with care packages, ready to look out for him, and Pac didn't even want their help.
When he first got into Clinton, there were people already with care packages for him. Like strong people that is telling Pac, if you got problems, let me know. I'm gonna make sure that the CEOs know blah, 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 and this and that. And Pac telling them, nah, that's all right. I don't need none of you guys to help me with nothing.
Lisane also pointed out that the only reason Tupac was taken out of the general population and put in segregation was because of his connections to these strong figures. The prison officials didn't want any potential incidents, so they separated him. So, the idea that some Puerto Rican inmate was pressuring Pac to the point where he had to call Fat Joe for help doesn't add up at all.
Officers, knowing Pac's connection with some of the strongest people in Clinton, taking him out of population and putting him in segregation so that he don't incite anything. Does that make sense to you? That some Puerto Ricans is going to put pressure on him so that Pac can call Joe, of all people?
And that's just one of the times Fat Joe got caught exaggerating. Another recent lie that got exposed was about Big Pun. For years, Fat Joe has publicly claimed that he took care of Big Pun's wife and family after Pun passed. He said he gave Pun's wife money, tried to help her set up a business, and made sure she was good financially.
After he passed, she had hundreds of thousands of dollars. I thought I did the right thing. She spent the money unwisely, right? She comes back and says, Joe, I'm doing bad again. We give her a check out of our pockets. We say, yo, we gotta take care.
But according to Gongu Gu Roach, a guy who specializes in helping artists and their families recover publishing money, royalties, and other earnings, that couldn't be further from the truth.
Joe was all over the radio basically saying, I gave her $750,000, I gave her $250,000, I told her enough's enough. Everybody bought it and believed it. It was all lies and mediation. We had him admit that he never gave her a dollar in his life.
Oh, so he didn't give her no money?
Nothing, not a dollar in his life, he never gave her, period.
Gongu revealed that he actually took Fat Joe to court on behalf of Big Pun's wife after discovering that Joe had been stealing Pun's royalties for 14 years.
According to Liza, after he passed away, Joe was telling her that, oh no, he owed me money. You know what I'm saying? Then all of a sudden, a bunch of fake royalty statements started to come biannually.
Apparently, Joe was generating fake royalty statements and working with Jelly Bean Benitez to send these bogus reports to Pun's wife.
For about 14 years, from about 2000 to 2014, fake royalty statements was coming out.
2000 to 2014?
Yeah. Joe used Jelly Bean Benitez as a publisher. Jelly Bean Benitez was Madonna's ex-boyfriend from the early 80s. He produced a bunch of Madonna records back in the early 80s. He remixed, he DJs now.
According to Gongu, Pun's wife had tried using multiple lawyers before him, but none of them could get her justice. When he stepped in, though, he was able to take Fat Joe to court and expose what was really going on.
Once I got the royalty statements, the same stuff that they had, it probably took me like a minute and a half to see the deception. I called her up, told her I paid for the case, paid for the auditor, took him to court.
And here's where Fat Joe's lies really start piling up. Not only did he claim he gave Pun's wife money when he actually didn't give her a dime, but he also went on interviews saying there was never a court case in the first place, when there absolutely was. Gongu even said he couldn't believe how easily people believed Joe's lies. Gongu also revealed that when a Big Pun movie was in the works, the people behind it wanted Fat Joe involved to use his influence and connections to help push the film. But according to Gongu, Joe allegedly refused to help unless Pun's wife publicly stated that he never stole from her. Of course, she refused because he did steal from her.
We were trying to do a Big Pun movie and stuff like that, right? And basically, we were like, hey, let's get Joe involved. You know what I'm saying? Because it's gonna be bigger with Joe. If you do it without Joe, Joe can get all these other people involved. But he was basically saying like, well, if you go on Instagram or if you go out there and tell publicly that I never stole from you, then I'll work with you. Otherwise, I'm not working with you. She's like, why would I do that? You stole from me.
So, at this point, Fat Joe isn't just a liar, he's also a thief. And somehow, people keep eating up his stories like they're the truth.
He was in mediation. He basically said that he never gave her $1, zero. So the $750 he was talking about, he lied. The $250 he's talking about, he lied. As you see now, people are starting to see that he lies a lot, but I don't understand why nobody reprimands him.
Another classic example of Fat Joe's ever-changing, questionable storytelling comes from a bold claim he made about none other than the notorious B.I.G. In 2023, Joe sat down on Cam Capone's platform and dropped what he thought would be a mind-blowing revelation. He said that back in the day, he and Biggie had actually recorded a full project together, an album supposedly made up of 8 to 10 songs. According to Joe, the reason we've never heard any of it is because the project was scrapped and most likely destroyed. Why? Because the songs were too disrespectful, apparently packed with disses aimed at Tupac.
We made a bunch of songs, you know what I'm saying? But they was like really disrespectful and hateful, and so he died and Tupac died.
And how many songs did you guys do?
I don't know, but a couple, not maybe 8 songs, 10 songs, like that.
Now, on the surface, this kind of sounds believable. Joe and Biggie did have a relationship. They were both from New York, they were around the same scene, and they were known to have mutual respect. So at first glance, people were like, okay. But once fans started digging into it, things didn't really add up, especially when you compare Joe's own past statements. Let's rewind to September 2018. Fat Joe was on Vlad TV, and when the topic of Biggie came up, he told a very different version of the story. Back then, he said that they had been working on an album, but they only managed to record 4 songs before it fell through. He even said Puff Daddy and the Hitmen were producing the project, but it gets even more inconsistent. In March 2021, Joe was live with Swizz Beatz and Timbaland. This was during the hype around Versus, and the story changed again. This time, Joe said he and Biggie had done 5 tracks together.
I say stuff, Tim, and they always say I lie or I say too much. I worked on an album with Biggie. We cut about 5 songs together.
And then comes Lil Cease, one of Biggie's closest people. In December 2021, Cease was on Vlad TV and gave some serious insight into how Big felt about the East Coast-West Coast beef. According to Cease, Biggie hated the idea of feeding into the drama. He made it clear to his team, Junior MAFIA, that dissing Tupac was a line he didn't want anyone to cross. He told them flat out, if any of you guys record this track, I'm no longer messing with you. That says a lot about where Big's head was at. He wanted to stay focused on the music, not the drama. And if Big was that firm with his own crew, why would he suddenly turn around and record a whole album full of diss tracks with Fat Joe? Then, in January 2022, Cease popped up again, this time on The Art of Dialogue, and directly addressed the rumors about a supposed Fat Joe Biggie collab project. And he shut it all the way down. Cease, who was practically glued to Biggie's side during that era, said he never once saw or heard about Biggie recording anything with Joe. He did say that they might have talked about doing something together, and that kind of conversation wasn't unusual. But as far as actual songs, Cease says none ever happened.
I seen an interview from Fat Joe, and he said that him and Biggie was working on an album together, and he said that they had a whole lot of Tupac disses on the album. How you feel about him saying that?
I don't think so. I'm sure I was around for a lot of stuff, and I didn't hear none of that at all.
He also emphasized something really important. Biggie wasn't the kind of artist to go out of his way to drop full-on diss tracks. Sure, he might throw a slick line here and there, that's just hip-hop. But a whole tape filled with shots at Tupac? That just wasn't who Big was, especially at a time when the beef was already spiraling out of control. Now, there is this mysterious rumor floating around the internet that maybe there was a clip on World Star Hip Hop years ago where Diddy himself supposedly commented on the whole Fat Joe Biggie album thing. The story goes that Diddy denied ever knowing about it. But here's the thing, no one can find the clip anymore. It's just one of those lost pieces of hip-hop internet history. Maybe it existed, maybe it didn't. But what's interesting is that fans don't buy the idea that Diddy would just let a full Biggie project disappear, especially during a time when posthumous releases were making major money. Diddy's a businessman. If there was music to be released, he'd probably have released it, unless there was a really good reason not to. On the flip side, if the songs really were packed with disses aimed at Pac, maybe Diddy shelved the whole thing out of respect or to avoid stirring the pot even more. That's possible. Cuban Link, another voice in the conversation, has also cast doubt on the existence of any such songs or an album. Cuban, who had his own experiences with Biggie and Fat Joe, acknowledged that Joe had a relationship with Biggie, but firmly believed the idea of an album was exaggerated. Cuban Link has called out Fat Joe several times for being less than truthful, and in one of his interviews, he provided his version of events surrounding a song that Joe claims was part of this mythical Biggie album. According to Cuban Link, he, Pun, and Joe once visited Diddy's recording studio, where they met Biggie. For Cuban, this was his first time meeting the legendary rapper. After exchanging pleasantries, Diddy told Biggie to explain what he had in mind for a track. Biggie wanted a Spanish-flavored intro to bring a unique vibe to the song, something with Spanish gangster spice. Among the group, Cuban was the only one fluent in Spanish, but as a rookie at the time, he wasn't sure he could pull it off. With some encouragement from Pun, Cuban stepped up to the mic, and together, he and Pun laid down the intro Biggie envisioned. Biggie loved it and hyped them up for their contribution. Then Fat Joe jumped on the mic to add his own flair to the track.
Puffy told Big, hey, yo, tell them what you want from them so they could do it in the studio. You know what I'm saying? Maybe they could do it. You know, because you say you wanted some Spanish shit. You know what I'm saying? And, Pun and Joe, we was there. And Pun looked at me. I was the rookie at the time, real rookie. Like, oh, shit, y'all want me to do this? So they both put me to do right? So me and Pun went. So then after me and him went, me and Pun went and did our stuff. Biggie was like, yeah, he was hyped up. Then Joe went in there and he put his spice on top on a separate track by himself.
Here's where things get messy. Cuban Link claims that Fat Joe is now taking credit for the Spanish intro that Cuban and Pun created. He alleges that Joe is using a snippet of this track to push the narrative that he and Biggie recorded an entire album together.
He used that little snippet right there to sell the fact that he did an album with Biggie. Incredible liar. Disgusting.
Cuban sees this as a blatant exaggeration and has been vocal about calling Joe out for it. For Cuban, the truth is simple. There was no album, just a single track with a collaborative vibe in the studio. But Fat Joe's controversial stories about Biggie and Tupac aren't the only things stirring up drama. In 2022, he sat down for an interview and made another bold claim. This time saying he was responsible for getting Trick Daddy and Pitbull their record deals.
I put him on. I took his made sure that they played it. They wasn't never gonna play it. 6 months later, he was rich. Pitbull, I took his demo and got him signed. Trick Daddy, I took his and got him signed.
However, that didn't sit well with Uncle Luke, who wasted no time calling Joe out on Instagram. Luke, a Miami hip-hop pioneer, set the record straight with a detailed response saying, "I love Joe, but I find this very interesting because I discovered Trick Daddy. He did his first song with me as soon as he got out from being locked up, and he stayed with me. I also discovered and signed Pitbull to the platinum-selling Luke Records label. He did his first songs with me. Because I'm from Miami, I felt the importance of signing a Cuban rapper, so I discovered him off of battle rap tapes. Maybe I'm missing something here. I do have the receipts. By the way, because you don't see me in all the videos and birthday parties. Yes, I found DJ Khaled on Underground Radio Mix 96 and brought him to mainstream radio. Luke's response was backed by none other than NFL legend Deion Sanders, who chimed in with a comment that added fuel to the fire. Tell them hero. Sometimes they forget. Luke always been that dude. He was one of my heroes and still is. Y'all have no idea what this man fought for. The music you listen to today is because of his heart, conviction, and willingness to fight for what he believed in. After the backlash, Fat Joe went live with Uncle Luke to clarify his statement, but the explanation left fans cringing. Joe tried to backtrack, saying he wasn't claiming to have discovered Trick Daddy and Pitbull, but that he was the catalyst for getting them signed. However, the video showed Uncle Luke looking visibly confused and skeptical as Joe attempted to explain himself. Fans were quick to call out Joe, pointing out how disjointed and unconvincing his explanation was.
Now, I know you discovered Trick. I know you discovered Pitbull. I've never said I discovered them. Luke. I took this demo out of love for hip-hop.
Even Trick Daddy weighed in on the situation. In his view, the idea of an East Coast rapper like Fat Joe helping a Miami artist get a deal didn't make sense, especially back in the day when there was significant tension between East Coast and Southern rappers. Trick stated plainly, there was no Southern artist that was doing any kind of work or had affiliations with the East Coast rappers because they weren't on good terms. So for him to think that somebody from the East Coast would go get a brother from the South, let alone Miami, and take his music to go get him a deal with no points or strings attached, I don't see that happening.
Like I said, I love Fat Joe, love him like a brother. I believe that he loved me like a brother. As far as him hearing about me or hearing my music and taking it to somebody to hear it, probably did. For me to think that somebody from the East Coast was going to get a brother from the South, let alone Miami, and take his music and go get him a deal with no points, no screens attached, and no nothing, that I don't see that happening.
Fans found Trick's perspective to be perfectly logical, especially given the cultural divide at the time. Many pointed out that East Coast rappers often looked down on Southern artists back then, so the idea of Fat Joe advocating for Trick's music seemed far-fetched. Trick even speculated that maybe Joe was just forgetful and hallucinating stuff. This incident sparked a wave of criticism, with fans accusing Fat Joe of trying to diminish and undermine the contributions of black artists to hip-hop. Many viewed his claims as an attempt to rewrite history, inserting himself into narratives where he didn't belong. And if that wasn't enough, Fat Joe has also faced allegations of being a snitch. Although he's denied these accusations, his attempts to clear his name only made things worse. In a video addressing the rumors, Joe repeatedly insisted he wasn't a snitch, but instead of offering a clear and convincing explanation, he rambled on with unrelated tangents and vague statements.
Joe cracked the dawn, has never been a rat in his life, has never told on a person in his life. I kill myself before I tell on somebody. Today's about love or hate. Now, meaning, we call people haters.
Although Fat Joe continues to be a respected figure in hip-hop, these missteps have certainly tarnished his reputation for some.